Craving the one and only Fong's Pizza? We thought so. Fong's Pizza in Cedar Rapids now delivers. Order direct delivery or curbside pickup from Fong's Pizza by calling 320-9992. All of your Fong's favorites and a Fong's spin on the classics, from their mega pepperoni to the Iowan and street taco. Delivery, takeout, carside to go. Call 320-9992. Fong's Pizza, Newbo District, downtown Cedar Rapids.
Iowans know a thing or two about a hard day's work. That's why we do things the right way at Barntown Brewing. Grain-to-glass beers brewed in-house. Scratch-made food, handcrafted with fresh, locally sourced ingredients. We work hard for the reward of watching our guests enjoy great food and beer. Barntown Brewing. West Des Moines, Hawkeyes.
I'm John Miller. He is Mark Morehouse. That makes this Hawkeye podcast. Thank you, as always, for listening to us and bringing us into a part of your day, wherever you may be. We record this on the 29th day of April 2021, a couple of days out from Iowa's final spring football practice of the year, a couple of days removed from Iowa basketball finally getting some good news. Some good news has happened the last week, where the news before that wasn't so great. And we'll start in there and also dabble a little bit into some maybe NFL draft predictions, as well as some of your questions that you submitted to me earlier today via the Hawkeye podcast text line, which, if you would like to sign up for the free text service that we have, just send a text, say, "What's up?" Sign me up, whatever you want to do, to 515-474-7216, and you're in. And there's no cost. It's kind of a breaking news line. We'll use it more and more as we get into the seasons. But, Mark, out of over 300 and some people that are signed up for it right now, we've got over 40 texts back with questions. Now, we won't be able to get to all those, but we greatly appreciate each and every one of you taking the time to want to participate. How are you, Mark?
Hanging in there. Wonderful week. I watched quite a bit of FCS football last weekend. And don't do that, John. Just watch baseball and be happy. Football, it'll be there when we need it. But I will say this. I've really enjoyed the hell out of FCS football this spring. I see a market. I see this is the entrepreneur in me coming out, John.
Okay.
There's got to be a spring thing for college football. It's got to make sense, but it's probably not this. It's probably not FCS. I just don't think. I think enough. It just wasn't televised enough.
Right.
And so that's that.
Wasn't wide enough distribution, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say, yeah. Not. I mean, I'm only able to watch because it's on ESPN Plus, and I actually ponied up the cash. I think it's worth it for that. If you got 65 extra bucks, you don't mind. I would say ESPN Plus is a good thing. I mean, if you like any sort of sports, it's a good thing. It'll feed you. But for that being your only distribution point for FCS football in the spring, it didn't really work. Didn't really give it a chance to work, I don't think.
Right. Well, I would say this. He's talking about football. Getting your football Jones in is really what you're getting to, and It's really scratched it, and you want more of it. But this wasn't quite satisfying. It's like buying a churro at Quick Trip, thinking it's going to be good, but it's not really. It's sweet, but it's not good. It's not authentic.
Right.
138 days since Iowa last played a football game. 128 days until Iowa next plays a football game. So somewhere about 5 days ago, we read, the Brimley Cocoon line guy on Twitter. When you're 18,501 days old, the same age as Wilford Brimley was when he starred in the movie Cocoon, which I'm coming up on that in a little too soon. You already passed it. You blew past the line.
Yes. I'm now at the Shelley Winters line in Poseidon Adventure.
So we've reached we're beyond the midway point of the football offseason. We need to come up with a term for what that is. And to me, it seems like the second half creeps by slower than the first half, but maybe it doesn't for those other of you out there, but we're getting closer.
The days are nicer. You have more things to do. Maybe it is a little easier, but you're still missing football. And Scott, we used to talk about this in the old podcast. The draft is a perfect marriage of college football fandom, watching their guys go off and getting paid land, and then you have NFL fans who don't care really that much. I mean, there's probably, I don't know what percentage there is, but it's the perfect marriage of NFL and college football. And then I'm watching the pre-show, the red carpet thing, and I had to turn it off. It was just so brutal and just so vapid and fart noise. I just, I prefer, football. I don't know, John, I tweeted this not too long ago. There's a certain age where football studio shows, especially NFL ones, just really rip your face off just to listen to and watch. It's just so full of crap.
Yeah.
And somebody tweeted me back, well, is that age 42? Because I think I'm there. And I said, no, I'm sorry. It's 43. You have another year of this crap.
Yeah.
So football shows, I'm watching this thing and I'm just like, I turned it off.
Yeah, well,
I'm not that desperate for football.
We're recording this as the NFL draft is. What time did it start? Or has it started? It's 6:11 p.m.
It's
Central.
starting. It's
starting right now.
Yeah,
they like you need the red carpet show. I mean, that's just, I don't know who's interested in that, but it certainly wouldn't be me either. Let's dive in. Jordan Bohannon.
Yes.
Surprising to me, I just talked with Jordan a couple of weeks ago, and I did not have any off the record conversations with him relative to his decision before or after. I told him before we began recording that I wasn't going to bring up and ask him about his decision. I said, Jordan, you'd be best served to announce that on your own brand. That's what I would do if I was you. So I'm not even going to bring it up. But during the course of the conversation he and I had, I asked him a question because, and I even joked about it with him, which you can listen to that issue and you'll be able to hear where I was headed with this. I said, Jordan, obviously you're very involved in the name, image, and likeness movement. You're one of the faces of this movement in college athletics right now. And I said, I'm not trying to, convince you into staying at Iowa, but it's be a lot easier to stay on the forefront of the battle for name, image, and likeness while being at Iowa another year, as it would either being in the G League somewhere around the country or in another country overseas altogether, when out of sight, out of mind. So, I mean, I think that, and we'll get into, Jordan's reasons for coming back, but I think that's an aspect that probably weighed into his decision that, he actually could be in the fight by being here where the fight's being waged on the precipice of the NIL actually becoming a nationwide thing.
Yeah, and I think if you're a student athlete, I don't know, Jordan didn't apply for this job, but he is kind of one of the faces of this thing. And he's not, I don't think Jordan will ever have to apply for a job in his life. Somebody's going to want to see him, get him in their company and give him a lot of money, because he's a presence. I think you nailed it, John. I think not only on the front, he's a mature voice on the front end of NIL, but he's just a presence. I mean, he's got just a bigger depth of field, I think, than most players and a lot of people. And so I saw some of the jokes, and I think Hawkeye fans mostly had fun with it.
Mostly, yeah.
Poor guy got somebody put a gray beard on him and compared him to me. I'm like, this. Don't make this a scared straight thing, people. Jordan's going to have a fine head of hair.
Yeah. I think that was X-Ray Ann, wasn't it, that did that?
Yeah, I think it was. It was funny, though.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Really
I genuine belly laugh from me.
Yeah, Ann is awesome. If it's Annie, I apologize. I'm looking forward to meeting her and several people this year when football reconvenes. So I actually went into Jordan's mentions on his announcement tweet because for some reason I just decided to be a masochist or a masochist observer. And I was looking for people to see if they were going to come at him negatively, because some people tweeted at me negatively when I retweeted and did a quote tweet that Jordan was coming back. And I had some people even in the text group said, I don't know how to feel about this. Or Jordan's just coming back because he's selfish. Jordan's a hypocrite. You want to battle and fight and take on the NCAA, yet you're willing to take another year of free education. And I've thought about this a lot since, relatively, since Jordan had made his announcement. And I've tried to analyze it from a different view of the one that I hold, which I'm excited that Jordan's coming back. Jordan's one of my all-time favorite Iowa players. Matter of fact, Jordan's 6th year, he will have been an Iowa basketball player about 25% of the time, or more than 25% of the time that I've been doing this, which is crazy to say. But so I try to get myself in the skin of those that are thinking that Jordan's selfish, and I couldn't. I couldn't find it. Right, the state of Iowa shot down before it even got out of committee the Senate file that would allow Iowa athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness. So Jordan has no guarantees that he could potentially monetize his NIL this coming year. I think Jordan came back after talking with his brothers, and his brothers saying we would give anything to go back and have one more year of college, which I would say the same thing. And I think that feeling only gets stronger the farther you are removed from college and the axis of time and responsibility kind of pile on you. But I also I think it's that. I think Jordan's going to get to be a 2-guard next year, which is a big, big deal. And I think Jordan gets to be on the forefront of the NIL. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's interesting. I'm glad you brought up the NIL and Iowa's situation with it specifically. I'm surprised. I didn't read a lot of the reports. I just kind of saw the headline. Did it come up? Did the NIL, its status in Iowa come up? And it is, if there's not, to me, there should be more coverage of that, because that seems to me like a sort of an existential threat, quote unquote, John, and that, boy, oh boy, that would hurt recruiting if Iowa can't offer that and other states can. Right. Period. Yeah. Bottom line. So I'm surprised a little bit that that's not a bigger story here in Iowa. That's not a bigger media thing, because boy, oh boy, John and I were talking about some of the slow time. Me going into the Horse Latitudes and having that morsel out there, I'd suck the life out of it. I'd be writing about it every damn day. I'd be calling up every poor state senator. Who? From where? Oh, right. Mark. Oh, yeah, Mark. You're funny on Twitter. Oh, you're asking me a real question about the NIL that I can't answer. It's making me uncomfortable. So I'm surprised that's not a bigger story. I mean, it would make more sense in my mind, if that's Jordan's cause, that him coming back, it's clearer that it's a thing that he can participate in, and it will be there for athletes. Maybe not, though. Maybe he's more of a shaper that way for the Iowa Senate, which, hey, you want to see some Senate turnover. If I'm running for Iowa Senate seat and they don't get an NIL pass and that hurts college, well, I'm running and saying, I won't do that. Right. And I'll probably win that seat hands down. I'll be smart enough to keep our college sports viable, period. And I'm running against the person who didn't. Right. So that's to me, it's a little bit of a political football thing. And then the other part is, and I think this is interesting as hell, John, and I love that you brought this up, and I love that this was a question. Score another one for the writers. He is playing 2-guard. I think that is interesting. I think that's I like it on paper. Let's see if Joe T struggles and the old point guard's still there and can still do it. We'll see. Let's see how it goes there. I'm a little skeptical, but I like that, and it is time for a different, in my mind, just a different look, a different trigger. Yeah. And if the sell to Jordan was, hey man, go hunt your shot and shoot threes until you get blisters, fantastic for Jordan. That's a strongest role, I think.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to pull up Bohannon's sports reference page here real quick while I'm talking, but I think that Chad Lysico, I think, had the quotes from Jordan before anybody else did, immediately following Jordan's announcement. Chad Lysico, the Des Moines Register.
Man, the Gazette must have really pissed off the Bohannons at some point. Go ahead.
Yeah. So That article I thought was really illuminating, and I tweeted and retweeted it and said, hey, the biggest takeaway for me, in addition to Jordan coming back, not to take away from that moment, because I'm extremely happy about it, was what Jordan said in that piece, that he didn't want to come back and take away any shine or luster on the development and role that Joe Toussaint was going to be sliding into as the program's point guard. And that Fran McCaffrey was recruiting Jordan to return after CJ left, and maybe before, but certainly after CJ Frederick left, say, hey, we're going to move you over to the 2. We're going to move over to the shooting guard, and you're going to be able to hunt your shot, which is a phrase that McCaffrey likes to use. And I went back and I pulled up some of Bohannon's old statistics, and his sophomore year was really that big year. He averaged 13.5, but he was shooting the ball 9.8 times per game. Last year, he shot at 8.3. And the previous 2 seasons, one abbreviated by injury, it was 8.4. It's that 17-18 season before Luka Garza turned into Jupiter, the strongest force of gravity that everything else sort of revolved around. Bohannon went down by 1.5 shots a game once he went from Bohannon's sophomore year, when Jordan was the star, to Jordan's junior year, when Garza became the star, and Jordan only played 11 games that year, and then this year. So I think Bohannon, he's got the green light. He's going to be the 2. We now know that Joe Toussaint's going to be the 1, which leads to a whole number of fun lineup speculation from that one article. I thought it was fantastic.
I did see that, and those are good questions, and that's, hey, Chad takes advantage of that, and that's good. I mean, that's good relationship stuff, and that's all stuff that you want to have in your newspaper for sure. I did see that you took a crack at starting lineup, which is something I'm going to try this week. I'm going to try this week to write how I think the numbers, predict some numbers for, say, quarterback, running back.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that this week. I'm going to do a little survey on what the teams in Iowa schedule, what they have coming back.
Right.
So I'm going to try that a little bit, but I also probably should try, starting what a starting lineup might look like.
Right.
You did that, and tell me about that. Tell me where you landed, where you think, and tell me some of your rationale.
Yeah, it was 10 o'clock on Thursday night, and I was thinking about lineups and all this, and I'm like, I'm just going to get my Excel spreadsheet out and just start plugging guys' names in. And I'm going to plug some minutes per game in that I can realistically see, because I think this is going to be Iowa's lineup, or this is Iowa's roster. I don't know that they're going to get anybody else in the
I agree.
In the portal. And oh, by the way, I want to get Tom Kakert framed something really well. I listened to one of his podcasts this week, Hawkeye Report. It was a perfect framing for anybody that's irritated that Bohannon's coming back, which, that's, I guess you're right. What if I was, and this is basically the way that Tom framed it, which is brilliant. If I was to tell you that Iowa had a need for a 3-point shooter, which we would have all agreed after CJ left and before we knew Jordan was returning, we'd all say, yeah, we need that. Iowa needs that. If I was to tell you a player was available in the portal who's made 364 threes from a Power 5 university and had over 600 assists from a Power 5 university, but he's an average defender, would you have signed up for that player? Hell yeah.
Yeah. There's anybody who says no is being
They're lying.
Disingenuous for sure.
It's revisionist. It's revisionist because the name's Bohannon, and for whatever reason, you're not a fan of that. And the guy has more swag to where he has to, carry a tube of balm around in his pocket to take care of himself because certain things drag on the ground. Absolutely, you would. So, Tom, well done. That was like a blind bracket reveal that Kakert did on that one. Do you like the ball?
Yes. Yeah. Tom is the one thing that Tom does that I really, really enjoy is summer basketball recruiting.
Yeah.
I don't know if he does as much as he used to, but he's plugged in there, and that's really, in a lot of places, that's the best recruiting. So, yeah, I like that.
That was go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
The lineup thing. it's hard for me to kind of fathom because there are a lot of variables, at
Right.
least even for basketball. And I think the biggest one right now, with what's already been answered with Rebraca coming in, J-Bo back, to me is Connor McCaffrey and his health and what he can do and what he can bring. And I think this team, I think the one thing that I'd really like to see change, and with Jordan coming back, I think Jordan was quicker than he was fast. But this team needs, I think, an upgrade in team speed, and I want to see where Connor fits in that.
Yeah, and I think so. When I got the Excel spreadsheet out, I started at the top. I put Keegan Murray's name down, like he's a 30-minute per game guy. I wrote Bohannon down for 30 minutes. That's what Jordan was as his sophomore year, and that's why I went with 30 minutes again for him. And then Rebraca, I think, is going to have every chance to be a 30-minute guy. And then I've got Joe Toussaint at 20. I've got Patrick McCaffrey at 20, and I've got Connor at 20. And Connor's the interesting thing here. So let's go with what we think we know. We had Fran McCaffrey telling Jordan Bohannon that Joe Toussaint's the starting point guard. And Connor McCaffrey has played some point guard, but not as much as Jordan Bohannon has played. Connor McCaffrey had a very specific reason why he played a lot of minutes the last 2 years. And that is he's an excellent, you might have heard this mentioned on television. He is an excellent post feeder.
Man, it took me a long time to pick up on that, but
and he's really good at it. He's always looking for it. Connor uses the dribble not to drive, but he uses the dribble to create space to get Luka the right entry pass. Well, Luka's no longer there, and you've heard Mark and I talk about this, that it's going to be interesting for Connor in life without Luka, because Connor's effectiveness, and therefore, in my opinion, his usefulness, his usage diminishes without Luka Garza. And while Rebraca is a 5 and has really good footwork and likes to be around the rim, he's not the target that Luka is. I don't know that he'll run the floor and do the work early the way Luka did, although I did see some of that in some videos. So I think Connor's usage, even before we talk about injury recovery, Mark, is going to go down in this next version.
Agree. And I also think Rebraca is different. He's not as big.
Yeah, he's 220.
Yeah, he's 220. Luka was 260, 6'11",
250, 260, yeah.
6'11", much bigger player, much more traditional. Traditional. I don't know what traditional is in basketball.
Traditional 80s.
Jack Sikma. He's a back to the basket center. But who can get out to the 3-point arc? Rebraca, we don't know. I think next year Iowa's probably going to be more of what they were under Aaron White, more of a run team, more of a transition team. I think you got to if Toussaint's your point guard, and I'm glad you keep going back to that, because that is the one thing we kind of know. McCaffrey said that to Bohannon, and they said it together when they introduced Jordan coming back. So I think right away that's a different speed, and try to play to that speed. Get players who can run like that. I don't think Connor can do that. I look at the way they ran the zone last year, and I'm sure he was scouted. But when they got into when they got into the tournament and they got into Oregon, I'm sure that the coaches there picked up on how they couldn't really run a lot of zone because he couldn't he couldn't get in and out. He couldn't get in and out like he did. So if he's not able to do that, I don't know what defense he's going to be able to add for a plus either.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Garza put up the numbers that he did is even all the more impressive, because the majority of the time when Connor was on the floor with Luka, Connor, again, great post feeder and got Luka the ball a lot. Connor's placement on his passes was impeccable. That helped Luka get a half step ahead of somebody. But the man guarding Connor was sagging in and playing zone. In the old NBA, it would have been called an illegal defense because his foot was in the lane all the damn time.
I remember that.
You remember those stupid rules?
Silly ass
rule,
yeah.
Silly rules. But because there was zero respect of Connor's outside shot. And I've done enough podcasts on Connor's outside shot. I'm not going to pile on. Connor's done the best he can. He was asked to fill a role. He filled a role. Iowa had one hell of an entertaining season this year. But I don't think Connor's role is going to be diminished into the future. And I think we know 4 starters. We got Toussaint, we got Bohannon, we got Keegan Murray, and we got Rebraca. That 5th guy, I think it's Patrick McCaffrey.
I think it could be. And you know what? It's going to have to go win it yet in my mind. But you have a guy who is kind of Aaron White-ish, a guy who's a little faster, a little can really get to the rim. I worry about this team on defense, and getting pushed around a little bit. But I don't worry about this team being able to get out and be athletic.
You said something in the last 2 segments that you've talked that I forgot to bring up the first time you said it again. Faster. You said you look for Iowa to play more up-tempo. There might be some people listening to this saying, Mark, what are you talking about? They came close to or set a school record for scoring last year. But I think you're on to something, and I agree with you, because Iowa's best scoring ability this year without Luka, who is the ultimate slump buster. If you're 0 for 7, throw it into Luka, he's going to score. Right. Iowa does not have that. Iowa does not have many guys that can create their own shot. Joe Wieskamp was one of the best ones they had as well. He's not coming back. Iowa's going to need to score more in transition, and they're going to need to get out and go. And it's not like last year's team ever put it on cruise control, but it's more important for this year's coming team to play quickly and score more points in transition than it was for last year's team to do that, because Iowa also had 3 or 4 different 3-point shooters last year. Next year, they've really got 1 until Keegan can prove he can knock it down, until Patrick proves he can consistently knock it down. So you're right, Mark. They are going to have to do that. And I think that there's some combinations that will allow this team to be a better defensive team than this last year's team was. I think certain matchups, Jordan, if he's playing a 2 and he's drawn the assignment of the other team's 2, might not be so favorable for him at times. That's why you're going to run Tony Perkins in, who I think is much better on-ball defender than Jordan Bohannon is. So they're going to have some interesting options. And, there's so many questions about what's Chris Murray going to be like? What is Aaron Eulis going to be like? What is Peyton Sanford going to be like? Josh Agundule, the Mulvey kid. Those are some, because if Sanford comes out in October and is really knocking down shots the way that Keegan Murray was knocking down shots last October in practices, he's going to get a look because he's got something that Iowa wants. And Mark, when you think about the starting lineup of Bohannon and Toussaint, they're a couple mouse in the house kind of guys. But then you've got 6'8" Keegan Murray, 6'8" Patrick McCaffrey, and 6'9" Rebraca. It's intriguing. I'm really interested from a basketball aesthetic standpoint what Fran can do. But I also think that this team's ceiling is probably an NCAA bubble team right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And just you don't know what the competition will actually bring and all that all those caveats. I think your line. I mostly agree with what you wrote for your lineup and the minutes, the way they're doled out. I want to see competition. I'm not into give Jordan what he wants. I want to see some good competition there. I want Tony Perkins to rise.
Right.
I want some. I would if Perkins, Eulis, Chris Murray, Sanford, if any of those guys, I think are like, I don't know, 25 to 30 or 40% better than maybe we think they're going to be. What a bonus that would be, and I think that pushes them into not bubble team. They're in. I mean, they're in. If a couple of those guys really turn on. To me, I think the guy I look to be that would be Perkins. I just like the size. I like that. I think his defense will get him into games, and then maybe he can bring some offense and just prove himself offensively a little more. Because that's he's still in my mind. He and Eulis are still really, really just blank pages.
Yeah, because as I mentioned, Keegan Murray, Jordan Bohannon, Rebracha, and Joe Toussaint. I think those guys are going to suck up 110 to 120 minutes a game. And there's only 200 minutes of game and player minute allocations allowed. That means that there's 80 to 90 minutes, 55 to 60%, or rather 45 to 40% of the minutes available are there for those guys to take. So there's a ton of competition. There's a ton of opportunity, and you want that. I will say, though, Mark, and you know that I do this, and I don't know if it's right or wrong. It's just what I do. I sat down to write this with a hypothesis, and I never know if my hypothesis is going to be if I'm going to confirm my bias when I start or not. I just start writing and see where I end up. And I started to put the statistics down. I put 14 and 8 for Keegan Murray, all right? 14 points per game and 8 rebounds per game. And I know some people are saying, what are you talking about, John? Some people are saying he's a first-round NBA draft pick. He's going to do more than that. I want to tell you, I brought receipts for that.
I'm reading the paragraph right now. It's your next post. It's projecting. It's the post I'm going to try to do for football. I'm going to try to do that for football. Projecting 20. The headline for the post to you guys is projecting 2022 basketball stats. Go ahead, John. You read that. I'm reading that paragraph just as you were coming up with it.
Yeah. So I've got Murray down for 14 and 8, 14 points per game and 8 rebounds. Since 1992, ladies and gentlemen, there have only been 13 Big Ten sophomore forwards or centers that have done that have averaged at least 14 and had at least 8 rebounds a game. And let me tell you the names on the list. Chris Webber, Glenn Robinson, Jared Solinger, Caleb Swanigan, Jalen Smith, Rashard Griffith, Joel Prisbilla, and Trace Jackson Davis. You should know every single one of those names if you're one of the people that said, John, Keegan's going to do more than that. Because that's a hell of a lot of royalty, and that's a heck of a lot of commas. That's 8. Chris Webber earned 9 digits. That's NBA guys. And when I add in the 1.7 blocks per game that I think Keegan's going to get to, and I think he'll get to that rather comfortably, that list just drops down to 5 players. All right. So for Keegan to do more than 14 and 8, that would be elite as a sophomore. So, but I've got him down for that.
If the blocks come, then a lot of those Grant Hill comparisons really do fly.
Yeah, well, there you go. And it's interesting that he's already projected by some people to be an NBA first rounder. And there's other statistics that I pulled up on Keegan just because I'm a stat geek and I'm here, Mark. Mm-hmm. As I was going through this projecting his stats, I went over to Sports Reference's Play Index, which is one of my favorite spots to stop on the whole internet. I was curious to see how many Big Ten freshmen since 92 had scored at least 7.8 points per game, had 5.5 rebounds per game, and 1.1 blocks per game in conference play the way that Keegan Murray already just did this year. Because I had a sneaking feeling that number was not large. Murray's one of just 15 freshmen since 1992, which is 30 years, to do that. That's incredible. Names, 14 of the 14, 8 either made it to the NBA or are still playing in the NBA. 4 of them, Trace Jackson Davis, Kofi Cober, Hunter Dickinson, and Georgie Benashvili, didn't say that right, from Illinois, they played in the Big Ten this past year. So we're, again, talking a very small group. So 14 and 8, I feel comfortable projecting that for Keegan. Bohannon, 13 and a half and 3. Where'd I get 13 and a half? It's what he did as a sophomore. Rebracha, 13 points per game and 6.5 rebounds per game. Maybe I'm high on Rebracha. Statistically high, not ganja. Rebracha is not a new band of
that's brand. Not a strain.
It's not a strain, right? Brand strain. You know you're legal over there in Illinois.
We're legal over here.
I'm sure Galina's got the high times rolling, the little head shops.
It was big news. It has a dispensary here now. Yes.
Wow, there you go.
Downtown smells a little weird.
Yeah, I've got Joe Toussaint at 8 points per game and 2.7 points per game. I think Toussaint's 8 could be a little high.
What about? Did you go with an assist with him? Or
I didn't.
There's no comparison to try.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm sure he'll probably be in the 3 range, 3 and 3, maybe the 3.5 to 4 range. I've got Pat McCaffrey at 9 points and 5 rebounds. Long story short, I added up the point totals I had, and it was 80 at 80.5. And I got to be honest, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying 80.5. This year Iowa averaged 80. I think was it 83.7. So I went back and looked at all the McCaffrey years, and I threw out the 69.8 that Iowa averaged in 14-15, and I threw out the 83.7 that Iowa averaged this year, throwing out the high and the low, and the average was still 79.2, which that's really high. I don't think that this team next year does that. I think they're probably more like a 76, 75, 77-ish. Anyway, so those are my thoughts.
They need to hit 3-pointers. And like you said, that one guy right now, proven 3-point guy, I would love to see, again, competition. I think competition for that scoring guard, or who the second scoring guard is. I liked I call them the second string, but that second wave of players that really had important stretches when Iowa had last, or I guess about a couple months ago, when they were making their final push in the Big Ten. That was the most impressive part of the season, I thought, beating Ohio State and moving that direction. I thought they were. I thought the 3-point shooting was kind of what pulled them through a little bit, a lot of ways. We've set the table here. Imagine, this is my long way of going into. Imagine if Joe Wieskamp comes back.
You're setting the table. I'm not anywhere near that table. I think Wiesy's going to go get paid. But
I agree.
Listen, if Wieskamp did come back, let's entertain it on the 0.5% chance that he might come back. Yeah, that would be that. All of a sudden becomes So then you're talking about a team that, they're going to probably hit 80 again, and that would definitely be a much better defensive team. And I would love it, but I don't think it's going to happen. Why are you going to tease me like that, Mark? I pretty much come to grips with that.
You wrote all your posts, and
I did,
and you wrote out Wieskamp, and you're right. Usually, I am always the first person. Whenever T.J. Hawkinson, Noah Fant, are they going to go? I would get the call. I would actually get a DM or a call saying, they signed their papers before they were home from the bowl.
Right.
And so I would get this, and I'd be like, well, I can really break some news here. Or, I'll just kind of vaguely tweet it and let these guys have their parties. That's kind of where you're at.
Yeah, and you've got to do that. You've got to do that. And let the kids have them have their say. But it's nice to know so that you don't just go waste 1,500 words.
That's the hard part. Sometimes you get 1,500 words in, and you're like, oh, I'm still not at my point.
Yeah, I still have to hit enter. Yeah. So that's kind of what's going on with basketball. Since we last spoke a week ago, quite a bit's transpired. The program's in better shape now than it was, on the heels of CJ leaving. What a really tumultuous 3 or 4 weeks that was, Mark. You had Nunji transferring, you had CJ transferring, dark cloud over the, then you had Liam Robbins going to Vanderbilt. You had people looking at that transfer portal like Iowa's not in anybody's mix here. And then you get Rebracha committing, which was very, very important. And then you get Bohannon coming back. And I'm sitting here thinking that this is a 8 seed at best team, bubble team more likely. But I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm actually looking forward to watching these new kids play. I'm looking forward to seeing the type of growth Patrick McCaffrey can have, the slithering one that you mentioned several times. I still love that adjective for him. I think Patrick could take steps that makes us go, damn, because the way he played against Oregon, there was some very intriguing minutes that he put on the floor.
I think he and Keegan are really fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
I think they're the two players right now with probably the best futures.
Yeah.
That we've talked about. I mean, we didn't talk about Joe Dub. I think he has a good future whenever it happens, and I'm agreeing with you. It'll happen now. But I think Patrick is a player with some professional capability. I mean, I wouldn't say what it is now. I wouldn't say he's a first-round draft pick because he's only a sophomore. But I think he can play well off each other. And I really like that second wave that they came up last year. I liked Joe with Patrick a lot. I thought that those guys kind of I think Patrick kept Joe in check a little bit out there because there was a real talking to, and Joe slowed things down. I think Patrick kind of helped that. I just really like that second wave of guys. They need to develop that, and I say that's the fun part for fans, but also on the flip side of that, John, it's also the sweaty, angsty part for fans too, because you don't know yet, and I got questions, and Connor and his hips, and so
right.
this is the part that Iowa basketball eventually, it's just like every year, Iowa basketball is going to have to show it. We can hypothesize as much as we want, and I think you did a great job. I think the stuff you did with those posts was grounded. I get stuck in those posts sometimes, John, where I'm trying to predict what the next year will be. Yeah, I stopped doing those a couple of years ago because you just can't. But you can look at personnel, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at personnel. Can Petrus have a good day against Indiana secondary?
Right.
Well, let's look at who Indiana secondary is. Do they disrupt the passer? And then you go, okay, well, here's a number I'll come up with against Indiana. I think I will probably want to control tempo, so probably 210 yards would be a really kind of a good day for Petrus against Indiana, a team that they're going to probably want to run against. So when you get into the predictive stuff, it's hard. But I think your posts are grounded.
Well, I appreciate that because I everyone knows that I'm a fan. But I also try to, again, step outside myself. And I was trying, and this will sound, one last thing here, this will sound really stereotypical because it's a white guy comparison to a white guy. But it wouldn't surprise me if Patrick McCaffrey made a jump and was a poor man's Gordon Hayward. I'm not saying this year, but by the time he gets done, that's just something. Their game's very similar, so it's fun. A few years ago when Bohannon was a freshman and Garza was a freshman, that was one of the more enjoyable, fun, entertaining Iowa basketball seasons I'd experienced in a long time because I had no expectations. And dang, did they play hard. Cordell Pemsel was busting his butt. They played really hard. They were really, really fun to watch. They didn't make it to the NCAA tournament. And I'll be disappointed if next year's team doesn't get to the NCAA tournament. I think that this program needs to be in the tournament at least 3 of every 4 years. But and that we've had several questions on in text from people saying, what should the minimum expectation be for this Iowa basketball program?
Tournament next year tournament.
Yeah, and then people are like, well, how many? What's the frequency with which we should make Sweet 16 appearances? And I'm like, well, what the expectation is? I mean, they've been to one of those things since the 80s. Right? Is that right? One of them since the 1980s?
316. Last one was 1999.
Right, 1999. The time before that, I think, was Roy Marble's junior year.
Kirk Ferentz was 1-10 at Iowa. The last time Iowa basketball made the Sweet 16.
Well, helped out Kirk. But so to me, I think get in the tournament and see what can happen. I don't know that I have a Sweet 16. Folks, I think sometimes you got to realize who you are. Like Mark said last week, Iowa is on the menu.
That's the hardest thing, I think, with talking about sports a lot of times is nothing is even and nothing is not, the variables. Football, the variables just really punch me in the face, and it makes this time of year hard. The one thing I didn't want to do as a writer was make a promise for a player that he has no control over.
Right.
Why would I do that? But historically, there are numbers like, say, I'm not putting pressure on Spencer Petras. I think it's a good if an Iowa quarterback, anybody, hits 2,800 yards in a year,
Mhm.
that team is probably winning 10 games because that team is probably already running the ball at 2,000 plus yards a clip. If you look at the numbers from the 2015 season, 12-0, Big Ten championship game and the Rose Bowl, that team, I think, rushed for 2,500 yards, somewhere in there. And the passing was not 2,800, but somewhere in that neighborhood, like 26. So I think there are certain numbers that come up with Iowa football quarterback, 2,800 yards. I need one thing I do with football right now, beyond quarterback, I already have that number nicely in my head, 2,800 yards for a year. I don't know what it would be for running back. I don't know what it has to be for running back anymore. I used to think 1,000 yards is that means a lot. Well, wins mean a lot. What you're, getting the yards you need when you need them is what matters.
True. And yes. And that's, Iowa's yards per carry in the rush. It's bugged me for several years. Last year was really good. And, Liddell Betts yesterday was, talking to reporters for the first time since he's become Iowa's running backs coach. And, Liddell saying that Iowa's run game seems really similar in 2021 to when he played in 99, 2000, 2001, and 1998. Of course, smart-ass John quote tweets, Big Ten defensive coordinators not in agreement. It's about how many yards you get when you need it. And to that point, we'll slide into football now, and this is totally unrelated. Here's another thing that bugs the hell out of me. Iowa trying to run the ball on 3rd and short and sucking at it the way that they have the last several years.
Even with a quarterback sneak.
Well, that's been their best. Handoffs to running backs, no bueno. I formation, inviting a stack box. But again, we've got plenty of time to do that. Mark, are there any general football things that you want to bring up before I pivot into some football-related comments and questions from the folks that wanted to participate?
Let's just talk briefly about the draft. I don't think any Hawkeyes get picked tonight. There's no Tristan Wirfs out there. I think Davion Nixon, I think he gets dinged because he had his big year in 2020. So he'll probably go around later than we think he should go. So I look at him, I think he's probably a second rounder. He'll probably go in the 3rd round. And
NFL scouts discounting the 2020 results?
I think most football people, I think guys can, if Nixon would have put up the numbers in 2019 that he put up in 2020, he'd be a 1st-round pick. I think there's a bias toward 2020, because of the variables that all changed, and there's just simply less football. There's less football for all those guys who evaluate football to evaluate. So I think guys who rose in 2020 will probably have a little bit more. All right, what was that real? I mean, there's going to be some skepticism going, and I think that goes his way just because he had his big year in 2020. I think he'll make it the NFL, and I think he'll. I hope he goes as high as he can. I think, though, a lot of times guys go around. Hawkeyes go around after maybe we think that they might go.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Although Desmond King, I didn't say 5th round for him.
Right. Brian Leuenberger was actually the person that brought up the topic we talked about just before we transitioned to football relative to realistic expectations for the basketball program. So thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian, for bringing that one up. Okay, Mark, you kind of walked into something that I want to ask this question to.
Sure.
This comes from Nick Capaldo. The over-under on Hawkeyes drafted is 6.5. Do you go over or under? Thanks for the podcast, Nick Capaldo. I'm going to go under at 6.5.
I'm under 2. I think they'll go 5 or 6. I go 5 right now with Brandon Smith probably not being drafted.
So we've got Nixon, and we've got
Chauncey
Golston.
I think Nick Neiman will get drafted.
Yep, he did himself really good favors at the pro day. Do you think that left tackle Larrick Jackson?
He'll get drafted.
Okay, so there's 4,
and then Amir.
You think Amir gets drafted? You know who I'm hoping drafts Amir?
Chiefs.
Kansas City Chiefs. Get another jet opposite of Tyreek. now that the Chiefs rebuilt their entire offensive line, thank you very much to the Ravens who, what the hell are you doing? You're at to compete against that. Nobody in the AFC can be happy about what the Ravens did in that trade. But I think 6.5 is an under. That's an underplay for me.
I'm with you there. I think Sean Byer, I think Brandon Smith, I think Coy Cronk, I think Jack Heflin, those guys will be free agents.
Yeah.
They'll get a shot.
I think it'll be a number of free agents. To segue into something what's that?
Keith Duncan.
Right. To segue into something relatively similar, Nate Olson, Mark, this one goes out to you. Should we introduce the season-long over/under challenge for football this fall on Hawkeye Podcast moving forward?
See, that was a hell of a lot of fun when I was winning that with Scott. But I'm up for that, and if Coach Olson's up to do it again, I'm in. Because
I would love to be in. I feel like I'm being adopted into a family.
Yeah, I really appreciate Nate for doing that. That was a lot of fun. And we always did it at the end of the podcast after my brain was pretty much mush.
Yeah.
So I'm using that as an excuse for my last performance in 2019. I don't think I was very good.
You had a tough opponent. Scott's
I know.
No slouch.
But I kicked his ass a few years before that, like Packer Bear thing almost. And last year he really went to town on, or 2019 he really went to town on me. So
I think that the person who's in the lead has to pick first.
Yeah, I would agree.
Person in the lead has, not that I am ever going to ace anybody out, but late in the season, you might. But I like to be, I'm a one bracket NCAA guy, so there's no way that I'm going to base my decision off of what you say. So I'm always going to go with my own gut.
Let's hit the text line a few more times.
Yeah, Rick Klon says, and we kind of touched on this, but let's hit it we can do a quick hitter. Which current football players do you think, what rounds do you think the players will get drafted? And you already said Davion Nixon maybe second or third.
Yeah.
I think Chauncey Golson's probably a fourth or fifth-ish.
I would agree.
And then I think Neiman's probably 6, 7.
I think Neiman's probably 4, 5, 6.
Wow, that's great.
He might. I could see him sneak up in the 4th, and he's got a brother's who is an undrafted free agent playing for the KC Chiefs, who probably compares pretty well. It's probably a decent foot in the door, if nothing else.
No, it certainly doesn't hurt. And then Jackson, a couple of years ago, everybody thought this guy's a first rounder.
6th or 7th round, probably. I think. He's a guy who I think if you're fully healthy might have seriously considered coming out in 2019.
You're right.
I think I thought one of the weirdest things last year, John, was him telling the media that he was vegan. I thought that was a strange deal.
Very weird career choice.
2020 was weird. So I was like, okay,
was weird.
He's a vegan tackle now, and
former vegan tackle.
Yeah, he came back to the meat world, but
that's what she said. I'm just
phrasing, but I know I forgot what I was going to say. So I just think 2020 kind of sunk him just a little bit, but he's got fantastic feet, good balance, long arm. He's everything you want in a tackle. Maybe not as strong upper body strength, but
right.
I think 2019 was probably, there was a bit of a decision for him, and then 2020 came, and I think that probably just dropped him a little bit.
Who's and Amir's probably 6, 7?
No, I think Amir, I think his return value could move him up to 5, 6. I think I have him at 5, 6, maybe squeezing up to 4, but most Hawkeyes just drop. I mean, for whatever reason, it's just and I don't get it, but Amir is kind of my Desmond King for this draft. I think he's just a guy who I think will inexplicably drop a round or two. No one will know why. Yeah. And it'll piss him off, and he'll become a killer in the NFL, which would be awesome. That's what you want. Whatever button it takes. Although you do lose a lot. I think Tristan last year lost $4 million being the last. No. He lost like $10 million being the 4th tackle picked.
Wow. Well, look
at the signing bonuses.
Yeah, as long as he stays healthy,
He'll get that back.
He'll get that back, but you know what? He's not getting that big pile of cash during this cryptocurrency bull run. He's going to really wish that he had that. Amit Singh saying that he hopes the Chiefs also take ISM. Oh, I know. This is random. This is me. Who's the last starting left tackle, multi-year starting left tackle for Iowa that didn't get drafted? And you
Boone.
Injuries though, right?
Yeah, and his ankle was.
And his teammates all say that he that's a shame because he would have been he'd have been right there.
I think he was comparable to Ike, who was a starter last year in the NFL, which is really cool. You guys, Ike, really really nice guy, really straight up guy. Met his dad. I used to park next to his dad in the before games at the complex, the place by the parking ramp by the hospital. Really nice guy, really fantastic people. I'm a big fan of Ike, and I want him to play a long, long time in the NFL. I kind of compared Ike and Boone, but the ankle surgery that knocked Boone out was severe and unappetizing. His dad DM'd me a picture of it.
Ooh, I don't want any part of that.
There were shards in there that were like kneecap size. So Ike went through, or Boone went through that. Multi-year starter, didn't get drafted. I thought he might have had a chance, but that might have been too bad of a thing to get over.
Yeah.
Asked me that after that one though. Maybe Marcus Zusevic was drafted. It's hard. I'd be hard pressed to come up with another one.
That's interesting, and your memory is good on those. Amit Singh had a second comment in addition to Chiefs. He says, "Why is Iowa so terrible at tight end recruiting 2 years after we put 2 guys in the first round?" I would just have to say this to you: last year in the class of 2020, Iowa signed Luke Lachey and Elijah Yelverton. They're doing okay. They're just fine.
There's no bad. Those guys will find the field this year, and I'm excited. Here's how stupid and nerdy I am. I will write a post this summer about who gets to be the number 2 tight end. Number 2 tight end usually ends up being a guy for Iowa.
It's a tell.
Alan Reisner a few years ago. T.J. Hawkinson was that for like the first game. Then he progressed.
Yeah.
But
it's a tell for sure.
But I would disagree with that. I want to see what Yelverton could do, and I definitely want to see what Luke. I think I put both those guys in the same line. Little more recruiting hype. Looks like Lachey might have just done enough to be mentioned in a depth chart, which doesn't mean a whole lot. I think both will play, and both second tight end. I like how they use them, and there will be. If I was playing well. If I was winning and playing the way you want to, you'll get to know a third tight end.
Yes,
because then they'll run the ball up everybody's ass. And that's what Ferentz wants. That's what you guys want.
Brett Johnson says, football recruiting or lack thereof, is it COVID related and no official visits related? Usually half done by now. I think yes. And there was a concern that I had, Mark, and I'm not saying that this is an unfounded concern or not cooked into the pie just yet, that, with what happened at Iowa last May and June relative to some of the Chris Doyle fallout ramifications, Iowa's dealing with black players. I was wondering if that could leave a mark in recruiting. I think still too early to tell. I would not say that just because Iowa has 2 commitments at this point in time right now, it's because of that, because Wisconsin has 1, Nebraska has 2, Northwestern has 3, Purdue has 2, Minnesota has 5, Illinois, the only other team from the West I haven't mentioned, they have 8, and their average star ranking on Rivals is 2.38. So your peers don't have any either. Ohio State has 10, Penn State 8, Michigan 7, but they recruit in a different level. Rutgers has 11, but they got a kind of a newish coach. There's a little vibe there. So I just think, Mark, it's more from no official visits being allowed, I think at least until June.
And that's probably it, John. I would say this, though. Recruiting to me, for whatever reason, it hits a rhythm. It hits a different schedule. I don't know what. I can't remember now why it accelerated. I think was obviously the earlier signing period probably accelerated offers, and then the visits and how that schedule changed really messed up with the rhythm of recruiting and sped it up. You guys have heard Ferentz the last 4 or 5 years talk about how recruiting is sped up, and then for whatever reason, COVID comes in and the visits and what you mentioned, I think was a valid reason and probably a big reason.
Mm-hmm.
But recruiting, it seems like it's like a storm in the summer. I mean, it just, for whatever reason, there it is now, and it's got to be frustrating for coaches. But I would say I wouldn't totally discount bringing up the Doyle thing for a slow recruiting, but I think what you say,
if Iowa were the
sample size
anomaly, right.
If everybody else had 10, Iowa only had 2, then you're like,
then that's
you're seeing this, and everybody's at 2. I wouldn't worry about football recruiting yet. The one I think one of the smartest things Kirk has done over the last few years, or I guess the last few years, Tyler Barnes, I think, is really, really good for Iowa football. I think he's grew up a geek fan of Iowa football. He's from somewhere Illinois, somewhere in that corridor of Illinois where, oh, hey, how about offering Sam LaPorta a scholarship? How about offering that big over here at Lena, the defensive and offensive linemen?
Mm-hmm.
I think he has a realization. I think he's from the James Franklin School of Recruiting. He learned from them going to Vanderbilt, coming back to Iowa. So I have a high confidence in Tyler Barnes. I think he's the right person to kind of be steering recruiting. I think he has a sensibility that is all encompassing. He's like an NFL. He reminds me of a good NFL GM. I think that was a smart, and the fact that he's blood, the fact that he's Kirk's son-in-law, I think that just makes the family tighter. Yeah. And I think he's a good thing for Iowa football. I think he's a huge net plus.
Last one, and there were a number of really good suggestions this week. Just trying to make everything fit within some continuity is a challenge. And as we get into the horse latitudes, we'll have plenty of potpourri shows. Potpourri, a word I learned watching Jeopardy, meaning a mixed bag of anything.
So you mean Aaron Rodgers' next job?
Right, there you go. Aaron Rodgers is pissed off today. Mark, this is from Kevin Holm. Compare Sam LaPorta to recent Iowa tight ends. I think he's asking, is there a recent Iowa tight end analog that you see right now to LaPorta? He says, is it Fant, Hawk, Kittle, Moyaki, etc.? The analog I have was not named yet.
All right, well, let me try to guess that. It's not Mike Flagg, is it?
No, it's in the Ferentz era. It's not Marv Cook. It's not Mike Flagg.
Let me see.
It's the other one.
Dallas?
Well, okay. Just shoot me in the head. There's two others.
It's the other 8.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. No, it's
to me, he's a little bit of a Hawkinson.
Okay.
Good blocker. You can trust him as a blocker. And I remember seeing Hawkinson blew my mind. The first game, coming out his redshirt freshman year,
mm-hmm.
I really thought it was going to be – he was not the guy I thought would be the second tight end. I thought it was going to be Peter Peeker. I thought he was going to be a fifth-year senior. He was a guy who kind of came up through the ranks and was an older guy. I thought, Hawkinson probably is a third tight end, and maybe he gets in. No, day one, I can't remember the game, North Texas State, maybe, something like that. And Hawkinson herded dudes around the field. And I even said to him, I was excited in the postgame. I was like, holy shit, you really know how to block. And he started laughing, and he goes, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, for a guy that played out wide at the high school level.
I know. I talked to him coming out. I didn't do a lot of the coming out of high school stories late in my career, but I did one with him, and he was like, yeah, I never blocked. I was a free safety, and I went out for passes, basically jump balls. And he was great at it. He was like one of the all-time Iowa record holders, like touchdown. Right now, LaPorta reminds me of a little bit slower Hawkinson. Great blocker, though. Understands space. Good hands. I predict him. He'll probably set a record. I don't know what the target record would be for tight ends at Iowa, but I'm going to guess next year he's going to be very close to that. If you look at what he did, he was Iowa's favorite target last year. I think he'll be again. I think that solidifies this year.
I was going to say Scott Chandler, but you talked me out of that. And
he's too tall. Scott Chandler's too tall.
Yeah, you're right. It's just, and Chandler was never that level of blocker that you were mentioning.
But here's the one thing about Scott Chandler. I when he was a wide receiver, this is back in the era where a lot of them wore the cute bicep wristband, headband. I guess I call it a wristband on your bicep. I guess it'd be an armband. And Scott says, yeah, you get all that stuff on, you look all cool, and then you go play tight end, and you put all that stuff on, and it gets ripped off of you, and you get beaten down, and all of a sudden you're a real tight end now. You're not a cute wide receiver with all those cool little armband thingies. And Scott had the right sort of attitude that way, and he knew, being a tall guy, that he was going to have to prove himself as a blocker. And shoot, man, guy made a lot of money in NFL, and he's that tight end list, jeepers.
It's amazing. It's amazing, and it's too bad that Moyaki was so injury prone, because I remember him walking up from I think it was the old bubble, to Kinnick Stadium, his first spring game, and seeing him and just going, no, it was an open practice before his true freshman year. I'm like, they don't usually come built this way right out of high school. He was 6'4", 240 as a freshman. He was a stud, but just couldn't stay healthy, unfortunately.
They're closer than that now. Yelverton and Lachey's probably he probably had to build up a little bit, but Yelverton was a full 245 coming in.
Yeah, he was a big boy. Well, anything else you want to add, Mark?
Just that I don't know what the hell the Packers are doing, John. It's making me nervous, though.
If you don't have Rodgers, what do you got?
Shit.
If you don't have Rodgers, you're the Bears.
Oh, goddamn.
All right, folks. That probably says a lot right there. Mark, I know you want to get back to the draft. Thank you for doing this tonight.
Yeah, you bet, man.
Each and every one of you for listening to this. And Mark and I will be talking to you soon.